Hello, welcome to the Football 360 show, your fastest hour of talk, football-wise, at least, on the planet. I am your host, JP Rock. He is Matt Bierman. How's it going, Matt?
It's going great.
It's going great. How about that national championship game? Were you glued to the?
I lost interest, but part way through.
Yeah, after what, like halftime?
Yeah, it was. They made it a game.
It was interesting,
and then it kind of got away, but just not the most exciting game. Definitely the semifinal game.
That was the national championship, and a lot of times it is. But we're gonna talk about that a little bit. Special thanks to our sponsor, Wendy's, located in Chesterfield Valley. Known for their wings, pizza, and live entertainment. You want to check them out on the 18,000 block of the Chesterfield Airport Road. Good times, good pizza, good insider out. Check them out, Wendy's. Always thankful for them. They've been with us from the very beginning.
Yep.
So.
Love those guys. Love their food.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great place to go.
Great atmosphere, great food. It's really, really good. So we missed the snow. Not unusual for St. Louis, the big hype of the snow. Were you all hyped up about the snow?
Nah, we're starting to get phone calls again about tonight. Is it going to happen again?
Yeah.
Going to cancel things. Usually we don't cancel much.
Yeah. A lot of disappointed kids.
Yeah.
They were expecting school to be gone. A lot of disappointed parents, probably some educators especially.
Yeah.
Thought they might get a day. They've only been back in school for a week, so need some time off.
I think they're good. Yeah.
Need some time off.
A lot of them are in their finals right now, so they don't. Could disrupt the final schedule.
Bunch of teachers were like, "Man, we hope we can get these kids in there, get their finals." So, anyway, lots of football stuff happening. National championship game, like we said, a lot of stuff going on up at the zoo. Some losses, off-season stuff. But we talked about that in previous episodes about that's what success is going to bring, and we even talked about possibly somebody taking a shot at Drinkwitz, but Mizzou locked him down. But how about defensive coordinator Blake Baker? $2.2 million to go to LSU.
Yeah, it's one of those things where he was very secure in signing that extension.
Yeah,
and then a week later, he was secure not because at the time he didn't have LSU. Obviously, LSU garnered more interest from him, and
that's why
more money.
Yeah, and that's why we talk about it being a business, and that's one of the reasons why I really don't mind that much the whole transfer deal. I think if there's some things that could be tweaked, it could be improved upon.
Yeah.
But coaches, they go. How many kids go to schools thinking that because of a coach, and then there you go. A few weeks after signing day, coach is gone.
Yeah, I would say that happens more times than not, and unfortunately, these guys are. That's just part of their industry, right?
It's
They're
business.
Used to it, and with the transfer rules now, it's definitely even the playing field. Before the coaches could leave and the kids were stuck.
Yeah,
and now now they have that one-time transfer, and then that definitely helps it out. But I think kids need to be very cautious getting involved with staffs that they're not aware of, right? And I think that oftentimes, sometimes coaching staffs can change and present new opportunities, but oftentimes what I've seen, the people that recruit you, if they're not around, you are like floating in the middle of the ocean without a life raft.
Right, absolutely. And that's why it's great if you love a particular coach, but it should not be your reason for going to a particular school. Right. You need to look at the entirety of it and then make a decision off that, because people love you one week and then it's like, but I'm going to go over here. Right.
Yeah, well, 2.5 million reasons to go there. So,
yeah. Is that the final number, 2.5?
I think that's what I had heard.
Last I heard was like 2.2.
Yeah, 2.2.
Which is, you don't want to go for 2.2.
No. Yeah, what's interesting, too, about a lot of those, how those salaries are paid, I think a lot of people assume, like, okay, LSU is forking out $2.2 million to him. It's much like the early stages of, it's the way the collectives have always worked, right? So the school raises money. Anybody that's gone to college gets the alumni association, or if you're a former player, the school comes back and hits you up for money. But these schools, let's just say a statutory rate of $250,000 is what the most they can pay any state employee. Then above and beyond that, that money gets paid by an endowment that someone else has paid. So the school's technically not paying that money out, right? That's money that they've raised. I've been involved with a lot of guys that have had, those higher level coaching positions, and the first whatever it is amount of money is covered by the university, and that's what goes into their state pensions and all that stuff. But then above and beyond that, it's usually got someone's name tied to it, usually a real rich person that gave a lot of money.
Right. I mean, that's how some guy who's an A&M person can come write a $75 million check, and there you go.
Yeah. So I think, yes, and so I think, the narrative sometimes in the public is, well, these schools are paying all this money for this and that, but a lot of it is they are raising those funds for those specific reasons, right? And then they use those funds how they see fit. And I don't see, the university, any SEC school costing the school much money.
Right.
Right. I see the other sports costing them money.
Oh, yeah.
But the, basketball and football definitely rule the roost, and they're able to fundraise. And then obviously they have organic generation of revenue through TV and
there's a lot of money out there floating around. Yeah. And if all you have to do is look at the size of the staffs and how they've increased.
The analysts.
Well, yeah, just the analysts, the people. I mean, they're making up titles that I've never seen
chief
before.
Of staff. I saw that on the site.
They got people, storytellers, and all kinds of interesting names have popped up, descriptions, job titles.
You know what I think is interesting, though, because the NCAA still kind of like puts on limits of, on-field coaches, analysts, and then recruiting personnel, and then, all that type of stuff. Obviously, all the stuff that's like more front office, like the social media, things like that are different. But what I think is interesting, there are some schools, and you've seen it kind of weave it in over the years, but then it gets really weird with the rules, and it happens in the NFL too, how much time they can practice. But like theoretically, from my perspective, there should, and this may sound shocking to some, there needs to be skill development coaches for a lot of these staffs.
Well,
because quite honestly, the vast majority, I mean, all of our college kids, when they come back from the season, big schools or little schools, all of them pretty much are out of whack.
Right.
They have not been spending a ton of time on their
development,
development. And I mean, that's why I would argue you see guys getting to the highest level in the NFL dropping footballs.
Right.
I think that's one of those things that quite honestly is really, it's really disheartening to see, because you have some of the best athletes in the world that struggle with some of the most basic skill sets that got them to where they were to begin with, because they could catch a ball above average.
Yeah.
And they had size and speed. And then you watch guys, drop a basic ball on a fourth down that cost their team the opportunity to advance in the playoffs.
And it just makes sense to have that guy added to your staff as opposed to the business end of things. Or the recruiting staffs are just huge. If you look at it, I remember even just say 11 years ago, you had it to where you had the recruiting coordinator was part of the staff, right?
Yep.
Quarterbacks coach, receivers coach, tight end coach. And then you had some guy who worked under him, right? Who was also part of the coach. And that was it. Yeah. Now you're seeing like entire offices of people who just are recruiting analysts, a lot of them GAs or whatever, and then there's like a whole staff of guys and gals in there who all have similar titles, and they're just part of the recruiting staff. Now, has that improved on recruiting? Has that improved on the evaluations? I would say not. So it's really interesting what's going on. And the thing that Ted tells me is the money's there.
Yep.
The money's there. We got to divvy out the money because that's in our budget. So if we don't use that money, then we lose it.
I mean, they're major corporations. Some of these guys have payrolls of, and just budgets of 100 million plus. Some are 50 million, 75 million. I mean, that's a large size company, right? And the beauty of it is a lot of it's done in a tax sheltered environment because of the being an education, nonprofit type education state entity, and they really it's a really interesting model, right?
It really is, yeah. And if you don't use your budget in the academia, they want to take it from you because somebody else has won it. Somebody else has got their hand won it.
Yeah.
So you better use it.
And it's interesting. I'm sure there's a behind the scenes struggle between in the athletic department with who else gets the money. Obviously, there's Title IX considerations for giving that money to the other programs, but what percentage do they get it and all that fun stuff. But I have a niece who plays golf at a Big Ten school, really high level golfer, and their program, because they fundraise significantly, the golf program, and I guess they have some ties and some very good, rich people that have benefited.
Oh yeah,
and sent money to them over the years. They have some really neat things that they do, but they fly private quite often, which I think is really interesting. They usually borrow someone's jet or someone gives them the money to fly privately. But that's few and far between, because their athletic department, their football, basketball, and the golf are the only three that do have positive cash flow due to fundraising. Is golf's number one thing. But for football, obviously, it's TV, it's attendance, it's uniform, right. Sales of all the hats and jerseys and stuff like that. But
yeah.
But I do think that they are getting very creative with how they spend their money. I was talking, I think I alluded to this earlier. I was talking to a friend of mine that's a head of a NFL team as far as like doing all the scouting, pro scouting, and he kind of heads up that. He was talking about the next frontier for those guys in the NFL, because that's what they've done for a living for a long time, is getting into the college game, because that's where a lot of new money is, because there's not a lot of people that actually understand that world. There's a lot of guys that recruit really well.
No.
There's a lot of guys that, think they recruit really well. And then there's guys that actually understand how to manage caps. There's guys that understand, all that type of stuff, which, you look at the state of Missouri, we have different rules than, say, the state of Arkansas when it comes to NIL. And, Coach Drinkwitz has more power and more say due to the laws than maybe a coach in a different state. And so let's be honest, though. Does Drinkwitz, is he really, his career has been a football coach. What is his background in managing millions of dollars? None.
No.
Right? Has he managed a cap before? Has he done any of that? No, the guys that have done that are in the NFL. So are managing a large budget, let's say it's $20 million that he has to spend on players or whatever it might be. Like, how do you divvy that out and how do you assign value? Then it goes back to the things we were talking about with the pro baseball teams and things of that, where they're actually quantifying who gets what money based off of real world metrics, not some subjective viewpoint of, well, I think this guy's really good. And I think they miss, and you and I know this, they miss a lot more than people would understand they miss, right? You have a team full of 70 plus guys on scholarship, and you have another 20 some guys on walk-ons, and clearly somebody missed at Mizzou, because how is Cody Schrader starting for 2 years at Mizzou, right?
Right. Oh,
clearly.
We don't want to go down that. We don't want to go down that path.
But that's a miss.
Oh,
right?
yeah, there's a lot of those.
And a miss.
Yep.
And those guys obviously erred in their way, but they were smart enough to understand to let the kid play, and then it really helped them a ton. But that's the feel-good story. But the real story is how they have a room full of guys that they paid NIL and paid scholarship money to, that he beat out. That's the bigger
true.
question.
Yeah. Well, that would force people to be introspective about their evaluation abilities and process. And I'm doing this for so long. I've seen it for quite some time. Congratulations to local guy, made good, Frederick Moore, Cardinal Ritter, national champion, state champion.
There's another guy on there from St. Louis, Dale Chesson.
Yep, Dale Chesson. So, but Frederick won a state championship last year, national championship this year. That's pretty good. I don't know how many of those there are out there. There's probably a few, but not locally. That usually happens.
He's the guy. He's the only guy.
He's the guy. But we were talking before we went on the air, and I tell you, I was talking to a college coach, and he wanted to know who the top wide receiver was in that class in the state of Missouri. And I told him who it was, and he brought up another name of a kid who's playing in a directional Dakota school right now. And he wasn't. He's like, he gave me the But I mean, I've had guys give me the on people like Marcus Golden, on people
I think
like
I saw him have a big sack this weekend.
yeah. People like Will Compton, people like I mean, there's a lot of guys. So it's been a thing, but now you have these huge staffs, so you really shouldn't have an excuse for misses going forward.
I think one of those reasons they have a big staff is one, they have the funds to do it. I think
reason number one.
I think that cross NCAA recruiting and establishing viewpoints on the lower level schools is going to become more important to them.
Yeah.
For years, I used to always tell kids, listen, they can definitely miss you coming out of high school. And you and we know countless kids that have been missed coming out of high school.
Yeah.
And your definition of missed is very, very broad, right? Some guy might be missed because he only had 2 Division I offers coming out, right? Another guy may be missed that fell down to the D2 level or D3 level or JUCO level that got missed, in his opinion, probably quite widely, right? And Cody Schrader is a great example of that, being missed. But being missed, those guys, oftentimes when they got to those other levels, they could be reestablished and then they would show. And I would always say, hey, they'll miss you coming out of high school, but they do not miss you coming out of college.
Right.
Because I would tell you, my experience with the pro scouts, far more thorough, far better. They understand what they're looking at. And there's obviously a lot more money involved.
Bingo.
And,
you hit it.
And those guys are really good. And we've talked about it. Like, I mean, I talk with NFL scouts. We have guys that will pop into our facility to say hi and just check everything out. But they want to know about the younger players now. Because
they do.
They want to know more about these guys. They want to know about their backgrounds. They want to know about who's working, who's in trouble, who's not in trouble. All those things, because they want to start getting that, building a line of facts to support
which is why I have NFL scouts reaching out to me who's doing the high school scouting and the college stuff.
Right. And they want to know that. So I think hopefully the college game can learn more from that and really digging in on guys. You and I have done this for a long time. To be honest with you, it is really frustrating sometimes sitting on the side of the fence that we're on, because you can tell them very easily, like, hey, this kid's probably not going to work out, right? Like, and the things that are indicators for me that someone's not going to work out is if it's a guy coming out of high school going into college. When I see them and I can tell you, like, hey, I don't think it's going to work for your level, is when they got offered, did they keep training harder than they trained before they got offered? That is first and foremost, is the kiss of death. These guys, a lot of guys, their prize is getting the offer. That is what they're looking for, right? It's a very empty deal, though, because once you get that offer, you've been invited into one of the most elite clubs in the world, and now you're going to sit back and relax? I mean, that's not going to work. So that's the first indication. Second indication is they not only they stop working, but they become a little bit more aloof. Whereas they were the guy that was always looking for the offer. They're the guy calling you.
Because the offer is the end goal. The commitment is the end goal for some kids. The signing day, the balloons, look at me is the end goal. They think they've made it. And it's the other stuff that's the hard stuff.
They don't realize how they've gotten pulled into the deepest end of the pool, and they don't have any life support for them there. They have to learn to swim or they are going to drown. They will not survive. And that's why we see kids, 4- and 5-star guys, transferring after their first year, because reality has struck in that they're not the best guy on the team. They have more guys that are competing with them. They're reloading every year. And oh, by the way, there's this thing called the transfer portal. They're going to bring a guy in that's got 2 years experience from a D2 that's going to play over the top of them, or a guy that came from another Power 5 that's going to play over the top of them. And I think it's a really tough situation for these guys to understand that, I always say you're invited into the most elite level club minus the NFL, but it's the most elite level that you can play at your age. And you think you're going to work less?
Yeah. No, you definitely have to have yourself prepared physically and mentally, and realize you're not going to have the same support system that you had in college.
Absolutely.
Where you had people necessarily possibly holding your hand, making sure you get through everything that you need to do in order to play on Friday nights or Saturday days,
Right.
and play at a high level. Or the things that you're not doing right, they'll overlook it because you're a good high school player. You're able to dominate on high school play. Everybody that's in college, even the people who are walk-ons, preferred walk-ons, they can really play.
I just had a
And so
kid.
you gotta
I
be
just had a
prepared.
kid in my office that's a walk-on at Mizzou, and I got to tell you, like he's doing it right. He's worked out.
Eye opener.
Works out all the time. He works harder. He really enjoys the process of it, and he's kind of bounced around from position group to position group, and but he's a team player, and those guys are the glue that bond the team together.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes they're the ones out of a pinch when they need somebody that has been silently preparing. And he mentioned a kid, I won't say the name, that he was like, oh my gosh. He's like, and we've mentioned the guy and he's in and out, high level recruit, had a bunch of stars next to his name, in and out. And I said, well, how was he in practice? He said, very low effort and the skills did not match what was sold.
Right.
It just, he couldn't compete, and he saw it. So he transferred to another school. Someone probably paid him to go there. And the unfortunate truth is, I think too, when kids are getting paid coming out of high school, their mindset is so different because they don't know any different. We're sitting on this side of the fence with years of experience going, man, they got no idea how lucky they are to get paid. But that kid who doesn't understand like what came before him gets paid. He assumes that that's just the way it's always been. People have told him, oh, you're lucky. That's good. He has no context to understand that what he's been given is really a high level deal for him. And it's a really good deal. And it could be a life-changing moment. But if you don't have that dog or that work ethic in you, you're going to get eaten alive at that level. And and when I say that level, that could be D2. There are guys, every level, there are guys that can flat out play football. It does not matter where you're at. It doesn't matter what conference you're in. There's guys that can play at every single level.
Yeah. And they're the high intensity guys. Yeah. All you got to do is talk to former players, and they're like, man, if we would have had that back in our day. And that was part of the reason. That's a lot of the love of the game on the college and the high school. That might change now that it's semi-pro ball, but you knew those guys were doing it for the love of the game.
Yep.
And with possible aspirations. Everybody has the dreams of maybe playing in the NFL. But if you're in high school and you're going full out, you're in college, you're going full out, you love it. And that's the proper mindset you need to have. These guys who are, showing up or not showing up prepared, you might as well just quit now.
So conversation again with the college football as players at home, because they're all home right now. They got a few weeks off.
Brady Cook in the elite.
Yeah, Brady Cook's been in quite a bit.
Facilities.
He took a little vacation this week. He'll be back this
Not here
weekend.
In the studio, though. You didn't get him in a headlock.
Yeah, he's in Mexico.
Bring him in?
He's out of the country.
You could be in Mexico, but not here?
Yeah.
Which would you prefer?
Yeah, right.
The glorious.
We're going to get him on the show for sure, though. But
sure.
he's obviously enjoying his time off. But he's got to rest. I mean, his body. These guys are all beat up. Yeah. But you know what? They're in getting their bodies taken care of. They're working out again. I mean, the work never stops. But we were talking about a particular guy who was at Mizzou, and someone, another player had asked him when the kid first got there, so what are you going to study? What school wise? And the kid looked at him and said, I don't really care. He's like, I'm going to the league. This guy was a walk-on.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm going to the league. This is my way to get to the league. I said, I'm not really worried about school. And they all started laughing, like, what? Like there's still guys that are so delusional,
mm-hmm.
right? When they don't even understand that they probably have zero chance to get on the field, and their mind is still telling them. And so that what I thought was interesting is the young man that told me this. I said, what do you think that is? He goes, it's that mentality of get rich quick. He's like, and since then this guy's stepped away from the team after 1 year. And he goes, he's tried 5 different things to make it rich and big. And so this falsehood of watching things on the internet about seeing these guys in the NFL and thinking you look like they do and you can do the same things, having no context to understand you have no idea what those guys are actually doing, right? Like you cannot appreciate how fast they move and how skilled they are. Yes, they make mistakes, but they make pro-level mistakes against other pros. Right. When you're out there as an amateur going against a professional, it looks a whole lot different.
Without a doubt. It's much easier to recover from your mistakes on the high school level, as opposed to with each level that you go up.
Oh, it's hard.
So, and that's one of the things, the elite football, combine is coming up March the 9th. That's a great thing. I was talking to a couple of young men actually at Elite on Sunday, and just kind of explaining it to them. And they're like, oh yeah, well, I don't think I'm ready yet. I don't. And I'm like, this is what you need to do to know where you're at so that you can get yourself ready. You don't have to come in and run a 4.5 40, have a 40-inch vertical jump. This is what you need to do in order to find out where you're at, not trying to sell you a bunch of stuff, photos of yourself or hype videos and none of that junk. This is, you come in here, you find out where you're at and where you want to be or what you're capable of reaching.
Correct. And the reason we do this is for exposure for kids. It's a dual purpose exposure to the process of being tested and exposure to what you need to improve on, right? Or thirdly, the exposure to what work you've been doing and how well it's working, right? So that's kind of the three-pronged approach, but we offer kids the opportunity to scratch scores, right? And the reason we do that is because a lot of that stuff doesn't need to see public light if it is not going to help you. But I also tell you, over the years, we've had kids that like a linebacker run a 4.7 weighing 220 and going, oh, you need to scratch that. And I'm looking at them saying,
because they don't know.
That puts you right in the meat of where these guys are looking. Like if you run that fast at that size in high school, they're all over you, right? But again, a lot of misinformation. And I can trace back on the kid that I'm in particular thinking about. And it shocked me when he did it. And he still wanted us to scratch it because he was unaware. Recruiting comes and goes, doesn't get kind of what he wants. And I think he's, football's done. 4 or 5 years later, he's done. He didn't really live up to what all the hype was coming in as a freshman. But you have to be open-minded and listen to people that have been there, that have good intentions. They want to see you be successful, right? There's a lot of sharks out there. I get it. There's a lot of people coming after your money and this and that. But at the end of the day, look at what the people's track record is, right? Yeah. Someone training somebody once or twice and then putting it up on their Instagram, that's a joke. Like stay away from those guys.
Yeah. Not everybody's good. Okay. If you run across people who love to write or talk about everybody being good, regardless of what level they are, regardless of their measurables, regardless of, that's something to be leery of. Not everybody's good. I'm brutally honest. Doesn't make me, the most popular guy in the world because I'm brutally honest. Parents necessarily don't want to hear that their kid isn't the best. I remember one particular parent, and I won't name names because I really like them, but they were very upset that I didn't have their kid as the number 1 ranked kid in the state one year. And they couldn't believe, they were irate. They're like, you tell me right now, who could possibly be better than my son? I said, well, there's a young man named Ezekiel Elliott, right? And there was actually a few people, but it was the young man. And he's like, I've never heard of him. He can't be any good.
Oh, he's at a small school.
He's at a small school.
He has more. We have more stats than him.
I'm like, well, you're gonna hear about him.
Projectability is everything. So, you mentioned Sunday. We had our first opening day of skills training.
The place was packed. It was so good.
It was awesome. It was awesome to see. We had, I don't even know the final count, 200 plus kids came in and got better this weekend.
So good. You wanted to just line up and compete with them.
It's pretty sweet. It was a lot of fun. Good seeing the guys out there. And what's cool is, I don't know if you picked up on the theme, but from the high school, we have a youth and middle school groups that are separate. And those really good resurgent numbers there with little kids getting interested in football and playing. But I found it interesting that multiple kids from multiple schools that were state contenders were back in the building.
State champions. Had a bunch of kids from Cardinal Ritter that were in the house. You had, Hillsborough, large contingent of Hillsborough kids, Luther North kids.
Luther North, CBC.
CBC, Marquette. Kids from successful programs. And there's a reason.
Again, we're not there for every single kid to come in. And we're not there just because you got to be really good. We only want to see the kids that want to work and get better. That's the 5%.
Right. So you had in one of the sessions, you had the Class 5 state championship quarterback was in there, and believe it's Class 4 runner-up quarterback was in
together,
there.
yeah,
together in the same group. Now, in that same group, you also had several of the top 2027 quarterbacks from the area
yeah,
who are up next, who you're going to be hearing more from.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. Really cool for somebody like me. It's like, a kid in the candy store. You had guys, you had a 6'8", 330-pound eighth grader. Going to keep him under wraps for now.
Yeah, huge.
Huge. And could move.
Yeah, and
right?
you know
Just
what?
a baby.
But what was the advice that was given to him? Work on your movement and speed. And his mother was like, yes, yes. And I told her, we don't know each other well. I said, but I promise you 4 years from now, you will thank me.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And because you don't know what you don't know, right? And I'll tell you, if you want to ask me about fixing cars or doing any landscaping, Lord knows, or home improvement, I'm not your guy.
Because it's football 24/7.
Right, it's football. This is what I know, is what you know, and this is what we do on a daily basis.
In fact, I was having a talk with your missus about that.
Yeah, there's.
I'm like, me and Matt talk about football.
and there's things I'm sure she would like me to do at home that I don't do because
she did say
football.
that.
So, but I think it's a healthy obsession.
Yes.
But you just got to get around people that have a good motive, right? I mean, like our goal, like you should not have to ask us what our goal is. Our motives should be pure as snow and show you by our actions, right?
Yep.
And looking at who's come through the program should also be an indicator, not a promise of what we're going to do for you, but an indicator of what's possible.
Yes.
And I think that is what's so unique about, the training space. And one of my younger coaches who's on our staff, really cool guy. His name's Kevon Latulis. And he's
from Texas, right?
From Texas.
He's a really cool guy. And I got to tell you why he's a really cool guy. Not to interrupt you. I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but he was a really cool guy because he saw me there and he came up, made a beeline, introduced himself. He's from Texas. He don't know me.
Yep.
I'm just standing there, observing. And he came up, introduced himself. I'm from Texas, really polite young man, and really made a nice impression on me.
So
good guy, and he knows how to coach.
It's a great way for kids to understand. Sometimes just walking over and introducing yourself. He has a habit of doing that. So Kevon Latulis is from Port Arthur, Texas, so real far south.
Oh yeah,
far south. He played junior college football, went to Missouri State. Moved to St. Louis after Missouri State. He got drafted in the XFL, so now the UFL.
Mm-hmm.
He's a running back. He's the only back they drafted this coming year for the inaugural, UFL season. St. Louis Battlehawks as a running back, but can be played as a running back and a slot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did he come over and tell you that he was an XFL running back?
Nope.
No. But he said to me, he walked over to me during this session, and he's trained with us now since he moved back. But he'd been in the fall when it's a little more mundane in the fall. And he walked over, he said, Coach, I wish someone would have had something like this down. He's like, we had a real small little thing going on, but he's like, nothing like this. He's like, this is a blessing.
Oh,
he's like, I don't think these kids understand. He's like coming from where I came from, and he's in Texas.
Right.
He's like, this is a blessing. And he's like, what is going on in here for these kids? He's like, I don't think they quite understand. He's like, but I just want to tell you, I'm just glad to be a part of it. And it's a blessing. And I thought it was really neat in the middle of just working and getting after it and being there. And, I've done it for so long and I've seen it, kind of recur over and over, but I get just as much energy every single time. Sunday was a long day. We had, trained in the morning, go through the day, and we had a meeting that night for our 7-on-7.
Sorry,
guys.
I didn't make that. I forgot.
Yeah, it was a fun. It was a fun.
Was it?
Meeting,
I know, man. All of a sudden, I'm like,
yeah. I will tell you, we got to take our 7-on-7 guys and do a meeting at the First Form headquarters in Fenton, and it is a gem. I mean, it is very unique. They have an auditorium that seats 230 plus people. It's like a college.
Nice.
It's bigger than a college auditorium just because it's so big, and seats. The ceiling. It goes super high in the ceiling.
Right.
The seats are all the way to the ceiling. But it's such a first-class facility. They came in. talked about nutrition to our guys, which is a huge component. And I think we'll have one of those guys come on someday and talk, because it's a missing piece. Sleep and nutrition, we've kind of talked about it, but again, I'm sitting there learning. Right. There's things that I know from what I do, but there's some excellent things these guys put on. Right. And first class, something to know. They start talking about, I think it's called informed consent or one of those, like informed choice. And then there's the NFS certification, which is like the making sure nothing bad is in it when you're an athlete. So you want to make sure not only if it says 20 grams of protein, that's certified that that's what's in it.
Right.
But there's also no banned substances.
Right. Or no added stuff.
No stuff. No
sugar, hidden sugars.
Right. No funny business. So they're first class guys. I mean, if you see these facilities, it's as good, if not better than any Division I, better than any NFL facility.
Something like that is also a blessing. The ability to have an elite for a young guy to go to, unbelievable. You put yourself so far ahead of the game. I mean, you had college guys, you had 8th graders with the high school guys, guys who had signed recently for college in there, going up against each other, competing, just making each other better.
Yep.
And, thank goodness that the young man, the 8th grader we were talking about, mom got it, right? She gets it. I'm talking to him. He's still a baby. He
doesn't know.
He doesn't know. Even though he's 6'8", 300. I had him. I took a picture of him standing next to one of your offensive line coaches.
Yeah.
Big John McNamara, who's 6'10", right? What is John? Will John be upset if we say he's 450?
He is gigantic.
He's gigantic, man.
He is. A lot of people say big.
Yeah.
He truly is Big John.
Oh, he's Big John.
He is the biggest person in the room. And is as gentle as they come. He's an awesome dude. We've trained him since he's been a little boy.
Oh yeah, there's a reason he's as gentle as could be.
A big little boy.
Yeah, because if he wasn't gentle, he could really mess some stuff up.
He could be a real problem.
He could be a real problem for everybody. He's epic.
He's at least 6'10" though.
I know he's 6'10" because I remember when he actually might be 6'10 and a half, to be honest with you, because he came to the combine, and that's what he measured at the elite combine when he was at Lindbergh High School.
Yep. And now he's coaching back at Lindbergh.
Now he's coaching.
Which they got a great
coaching
program
at Lindbergh,
there.
Coaching at your place.
Yeah.
And so I had a picture taken with them two side by side, and that's how I could tell, 6'8", 6'10", 6'10", and a little bit much. But the young man didn't know. And you're trying to talk to him about stuff, and he, it's not firing, but very reminiscent of another young guy you had as an 8th grader who was there.
Miles McVay.
Who was, So did you, maybe you picked up on that too.
I actually mentioned it, and it's funny. My wife, who works the front desk, was talking to them when they were leaving, and she said, "Hey, did anybody tell you they back there?" And she knows. I mean, she is completely separate from like the football operations. I mean, she is not involved in football at all, and other than listen to talk about it. And she said, "Did anybody tell you that you remind them of somebody that you've trained here?"
Yeah,
and he's like, "Yeah, his name's Miles McVay." So he pulls up his phone and starts Googling it and like sees it and it's like, oh wow, yeah, like Miles is the real deal. Yeah. But it's such an exciting time when we get to start. Like our little saying is, next season starts today. Well, we are focused on next season and then setting up good habits for beyond, right? And many seasons to come. And I think when you have an opportunity to better yourself, right? Like we don't have room for every St. Louis kid in St. Louis to come train. We only have room for the guys that really want to be there. And that does not mean you have to be an elite level guy.
Right.
I think that's the one tough thing is some kids get scared away, but that is a limiting behavior because once they realize like I can come in there, I can tell you the number of kids that came in that were what I would term average, right? Skill set wise and movement wise, that come consistently, that then all of a sudden one day they're over there running the drill that they were scared to get into. Now they're the guy. It's unbelievable to see, and it's so refreshing and it's so humbling.
Oh, it's great. And I can go one better. I see the guys who come in and it's like you see them there and like, well, God bless them that they're coming in here. They want to learn, they're interested in this. And you see those guys who may not have business, training with guys who are college caliber players. And you see those guys, they make it themselves into really good high school players. and playing on varsity ball. And that might be all the higher they go, but that's their dream. They want to be the best high school football player they can be. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm going to the league, I'm going to D1.
No.
Some guys come in there just want to be a really good high school football player and contribute to the team.
Okay. We need guys to do that.
Absolutely. It's a team sport.
And like I told these guys in the meeting the other night, whether you like it or not, at some point you're going to be asked to retire from the game of football. You're going to choose to retire, or you're going to be physically forced to retire.
Right.
So this is not a game you get to extend through the rest of your life. Although I did see an ad for a
senior
league. And I thought, with no practices, I thought, of all golf sports to do that, don't do it.
Right.
Just don't get in pads.
Can barely walk as it is.
Don't get in pads. I mean, I had one guy.
Aches and pains.
I had an NFL guy tell me one time that for no less than $1 million would he play, because the guys coming after him, on the offense, he's like, they're there to hurt you. Yeah. He's like, they're nice guys, but they want to hurt you.
Yeah.
So, interesting story. Speaking of like pro guys, did you see one of our very own was selected as a second year player to the Pro Bowl?
I didn't see that.
So Kyren Williams, Pro Bowl. So in his second year in the league.
Interesting.
So Joe,
congrats to him.
If you have the picture I sent you,
congrats to Kyren Williams, a guy. Speaking of guys who talking to college coaches, they were interested in. Oh, there's a little. Yeah, look at that.
So this picture,
I remember him.
That's Kyren Williams and Jared Cook. Okay. Yep. So in this picture, Jared Cook had just left the Rams and was going to up to Green Bay. So in this picture, both of those two are not all pros, right? Now you fast forward, but they worked out. Kyren was in there. I let him and Tony Adams, I think I've talked about it, I let them come do some of the older kid stuff with the older pro guys. But Jared Cook was in training. And so I sent Jared this picture the other day, and I said, hey, you might not have known this, but all these years ago when you took this picture with Kyren Williams, which Kyren's 18 in that photo, 17 or 18, just about to turn 18, I think.
I remember
Looks
that
like a
Kyren.
baby. Looks like a baby. But Jared's also 6'6". Right. But both of them are all pros. Both those guys are all pros in that picture. And I think it's pretty sweet that you look back, those experiences. Kyren never shied away from being around those older guys. Mm-hmm. I don't know that he was comfortable all the time, because you got an NFL guy throwing a ball at you. I mean, Gabbert rips the ball, which he got to win this weekend with the Chiefs. But I just thought that was a really cool picture. Took it right outside of my office. I remember it was hot as could be. They were sweating their butts off. And Jared was getting ready to go off to camp, and Kyren was getting ready to start his senior season, I believe. So,
very cool.
It's cool to see things like that come full circle, right? And
with what we do, that we see that all the time. And Kyren was one of those guys. I remember talking to college coach about him, and college coach didn't even want to speak to him. Yeah, came in late wanting him, but by that time, I mean, Notre Dame.
Yeah, that poor guy. So Lindenwood camp, previous to the new iteration of how we run Lindenwood today,
right?
It was not a great day. The weather was bad. They canceled it. It was a really weird.
Had to finish the testing in the weight room.
Yeah, it was a really weird deal. Yep. And I remember telling Coach Hill from Mizzou, I said, "Hey, you guys got to offer this kid. You have to." Like, and I'd already gotten into it with one of their other assistants about it a few weeks earlier. And he was like, it's not my area, because he was recruiting Kansas City at the time or whatever. He's like, I'll put my word in. He's like, but. He's like, I don't think they're going to pull the trigger on it and offer him. I said, you're making a huge mistake, right? And of course, look back on it, everything worked out great for Kyren, and I think he made a great choice, right, for himself, and he's in the NFL. I mean, he's all pro.
Yeah,
I think the Rams greatly value him. I think they love what they get out of him, and he's a guy. From a testing perspective, does well, but he's nothing off the charts. But his film does not lie. It's never lied.
Film doesn't lie.
It's never lied.
I like to lay eyeballs on guys actually playing, and that you really notice it. Film can be a little misleading, especially highlight films, because every play is a good play, right? But when you watch somebody, that's why I like watching somebody live, because you see all the little nuances. You see, are they going to block? What do they do when they're not targeted? And so Kyron was one of those guys. We talked about Aeneas Williams
Mm-hmm.
being a football player, Jeremiah McClellan being a football player. You put him anywhere, that's Kyron Williams.
Yep.
So not surprised at his success. That coach that you mentioned is interesting because they offered a wide receiver that day from St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
So
same last name.
Yeah.
So
you were there.
Yeah. So, but I think
but they didn't even want to talk.
No. And he waited around. He waited around. I remember talking to he and his mom afterwards. He was so dejected. And Mizzou did end up coming in late on him. And then they had a local media person tell them, if you go to Mizzou, you'll be remembered. If you don't, it's over. Well, you're an all-pro. You can walk into any room and feel pretty good about yourself, no matter where you went to school.
Right, exactly.
Because that is rare air. And
what's interesting is, Aeneas Williams going there, very similar type.
Very similar.
Yeah, with Aeneas probably being a little bit more athletically gifted.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got the guy, you find guys, those are hard to find,
yeah.
So I think we're going to have him on too. One of the coaches at our facility, phenomenal human being, Mizzou legend,
Zach
Abram and Justin Gage.
Oh yeah.
If you talk both those guys, it's interesting. They're real excited about what's going on at Mizzou.
Oh, it was Mizzou Fest up there on Sunday.
Yeah, so you got two. I mean, really, the Mizzou legends, and
Doc Gooden too.
Doc Gooden was there as well. I mean, guys that are like people know them that are Mizzou guys, and but Coach Gage and I had a really good conversation, and I want to have him come on and talk in depth about what kind of the epidemic we're seeing with kids dropping balls, right? Like the primary name of a receiver is receiver, right? That means catch the ball, right? You have other jobs, right? Getting open and
got to block,
blocking, things like that. But receiver indicates that the primary function is you're going to receive the ball. And a lot of emphasis has gotten away from actually how to catch the football, right? And one of the things we actually worked with Jared Cook that summer before he actually was an all-pro, for his first all-pro season, was just catching the ball, getting back to basics, hand-eye coordination, a lot of like central nervous system type work to get the body to tune in on the ball. And that really makes a huge difference when you're a great ball catcher. And we have a lot of guys that are really excellent at doing a bunch of releases that they're never going to do in games. And we have a bunch of guys that are really good at running crazy routes that the quarterback will never throw to them if they run.
Yep.
It's Instagram. It's the fad. But
if too much wiggle.
If you want to go to the high level, know how to run the routes that they will require.
Right.
Okay. I'll give you a quick example. Blaine Gabbert. When he spent a ton of off seasons, probably 7 or 8 when he was back in St. Louis. Now he's an older man. He's got his family. He's living in Florida in the off season. But I mean, he had some hardcore training in the off season, and we had a variety of guys that would come in and catch for him. And I would always warn guys, like, listen, if he tells you he's going to hit you on your 8th outside step, you better get your head around.
Mm-hmm.
He will hit you in the face with the ball.
Yep.
Like
you'll remember that.
So a lot of people don't understand is like the quarterbacks at that level in particular and younger guys, we're teaching them how to do it, but the brain is picking up the rhythm and speed of that athlete, and it's counting the steps inherently. It just understands how to consciously, while he's reading all the other stuff, count steps, and it knows the timing. So they don't want to waste any extra time because they don't have extra time, especially at that level. And we had a kid that was just had come off a national championship, kid named Deion Kane. And I told him, I said, hey, you need to get your head around. He said, oh yeah. And I said, he throws hard. Oh, I'm good. Comes back a couple of plays, routes later. He said, oh my God, you weren't lying. He rips it. And I said, yeah. And he almost took his head off because he got a little too high on a route and didn't break, and the ball's already coming because that's what NFL guys do. But guess what? So do college quarterbacks. So if you're a young receiver, we're going to bring Coach Gage in and talk to him. He's a recent Mizzou.
He'll be a good guest.
He's a recent Mizzou Hall of Fame inductee. Yep. I always tell kids he's the best athlete that's in the building whenever he's there. I mean, the guy started on the basketball team and the football team at a high level, and then played in the NFL. But he's a very practical guy. Like, he'll just call it the way it is. I think, it's tough sometimes being in a position of like he's seen so much, but kids still don't want to listen to the truth. And I think, he could provide a lot of insight, but we're talking about doing some specialty programming with him on just understanding how to watch film and how to catch the darn ball and run the routes that you're going to run as you get deeper into the game.
So we got a question from the audience. I'm sure you're the guy to answer, but what times and days can people get in to get the sessions?
On Sundays we train from, so there's an 11 o'clock for the youth, 11 to 12:20 for our youth. So kindergarten to 5th grade. High school, there's a class from 12:30. So an 8th grader rising into high school. Typically those guys start in that class, and there's a 12:30 to 1:50, and then a 3:30 to 4:50. And then the middle school is wedged right in the middle from 2 to 3:20 p.m.
And Wednesdays?
And then Wednesdays start in the middle of February, like the 21st of February, and it's 6:40 to 8 for a youth and middle school, and then 8 to 9:20 for the high schoolers. And then Monday through Friday, there's speed classes.
Individual sessions.
Yeah, individual. And then there's private training 7 days a week. So if you can always just call us or check, go online at Elite.
Do you have a website and a phone number?
EliteFootball.net, and then 636-346-1371.
There you go.
Yeah. So, but I do think all those skill sets, you can make the argument with receivers, it's about pass catching, but what is it also? It's pass setting for the offensive linemen. Quarterbacks, it's making the throws, being efficient in your mechanics. Defensive backs, it's understanding what's coming at you, how to break. All those things, every position group has its thing, right? That defines that position group. So, we like to work on the things that are going to help you stay on the field, get on the field, and stay on the field.
And it shows. And it shows, like it says, what's fun and interesting for me is to go and see the guys working on that stuff and then watch them in person and see them implement it in a game in real time. And you can tell who bought into it, who's
100%.
Who's using what they learned and who's not. And I even remember being at a different combine, a different state or part of the state, and a guy who's the current starting center for Arizona Wildcats was going in one-on-ones, and I he looked a little confused, and I'm like, hey, rely on your training, and so he did that and wound up being one of the top couple of guys who were last man standing at the end.
Well, at the end of the day, like having mechanics and technique you can rely upon is really, because when you get to college, you're all by yourself.
Oh yeah.
Whether they told you were the best recruit ever or not, you have your skill set to rely upon. And I will tell you, that's the impetus of why I started what I started way back when in 1999. When I got to college, I realized, well, how the heck do these guys know all this stuff, right? Because I didn't, no disrespect to the guys that coached me in high school, I only learned stuff at camps.
Right.
And I'd go to college camps in the summer and then take it back home and practice it. And then, my coaches were good guys, but, I wouldn't say we were overly evolved. And then, but I think a lot of other guys come out of that situation, right? And truthfully, a high school coach, they only have so much time, and they're going to teach team and scheme over skill and technique. That's just the way it is. There's only so much time.
Yeah.
And but I look back on it, and that was really the impetus of like okay. And then I started coaching. I'm like, wait a second, I want to spend time teaching these guys the stuff that I wish I would have known.
Right.
And then I found a bunch of other coaches that wanted to do the exact same thing. And usually the best part is we have coaches come in, much like we were talking about with Kevon Latulis, where they're like, man, I wish I would have had this when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And but again, back to what we were talking about. A lot of kids just take it for granted because they don't know any different.
They don't.
But it hasn't always been this way.
No, they really don't. They don't realize. And you want to know what? You see the rise in talent level, the rise in guys who are getting recruited, the rise in guys who are making it to the NFL coincide with the start of places like Elite, with other trainers and coaches, and even 7-on-7 to some degree. Just the interest level. You got to have it there because guys were just showing up beforehand, like you said, and you got to learn on your own what you can when you can. Now you have ready-made places for you to go and develop yourself and be ready when the time comes.
So I was searching for that photo of Jared Cook and Kyron because I knew I had it. I specifically remember taking it. a long time ago. And I started like just kind of on my phone. It's got a lot of videos from back in the day, and I don't erase anything.
What's the number on your phone? How many photos?
Oh my God, it's all in the
15,000.
Yeah, we have.
Just on your phone. Yeah.
It's ridiculous, but I saved them all, right?
Right.
And so
same here.
Because of course I want to go back and look at them some point, right? So like I have like the data pack that's on your iPhone that's way too big that I get a bill every month for them. Like, I got to save all these photos.
Same. So, I got Drew Lock's very first interview when he was like a freshman in high school.
Just like that, like you want to save it, right? And I'm too anal to like put it on something else and then save it on there. So, but I was going through, so and Brady Cook's back in town, so we were just reminiscing, shooting the breeze about different things, and I sent him a video of there's a drill that we run called the Chaos Drill, and this particular night I cannot remember what the deal was, but it was Jaron Lewis, who ended up going to Kansas State, Brett Gabbert, who was at Miami of Ohio,
right.
Emilio Monsiváis, who was a college quarterback at the time, I think Missouri Baptist. I think he was just beginning his college career. A young Brady Cook. These are all high school guys. Isaiah Williams, who was
at Trinity, Illinois,
Trinity, and then they're going to Illinois, all Big Ten receiver now, but was a quarterback then. And then Nate Martins, I believe, was there. I mean, it was Jake Murphy went to Truman State.
Yeah.
Carter Davis, it's at Lindenwood. I mean, stacked.
Nate was Northern Iowa.
Yeah, right. Just awesome group, right? So I sent Brady a few photos of that in the video, and I think Joe, if you got one, I sent it to you. I don't know if you got it up, but it's probably not a great video, but it's a video of our Chaos Drill, which is 4 defenders, 3 receivers with the quarterback, multiple people moving around inside of that.
It is
drill.
chaos.
And it's definitely a chaos type environment. And so when you go to throw, it's one of those things. So I looked at it, and you want to see like certain attributes from guys, right? And then all those guys were really good quarterbacks. And people say, well, why do you think Brady Cook's successful? One, the kids never stop working. Not that those guys stopped working either.
Right.
But he had a little bit of juice in his arm at that time. Even you watch it, you're like, oh shoot, absolutely. That's pretty good, right?
Freshman in high school, yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, right. And so a lot of the stuff too these days is like how you shoot things, right? So like a lot of stuff on Instagram, they're directly behind the ball, and it looks like it's going 100 miles per hour,
right?
And it's really not. I mean, it's just a good thrown ball, and it looks like it's taken off like a rocket, but really it's not.
Right.
It's just,
which, by the way, I got a message from the booth that we do not have the video. The file is,
it did not.
Something happened.
Okay. Yeah. So the file's not good.
Right.
So anyway.
But you did a good job describing it.
It's a fun.
It is chaos, yeah.
It is definitely it's a fun drill, and it's one of those things
everybody gets hyped during it. It's the one where you get everybody screaming.
Everybody's yelling and screaming. And I will tell you though, of all the years, that drill and all the athletes, there's certain things you can see with the receivers and defensive backs where you're like, oh my gosh, that guy's just a baller. Like he can figure out how to find space.
Yep.
Tony Adams, he owns that drill. Like literally, like he's the best that I've ever seen in it as far as like a receiver or a defensive back. And that's why he's playing in the NFL.
Exactly.
But really good way to figure out who's an athlete who can spatially be aware and find open space, right? And that's what we're talking about when we talk about really good athletes. Like those guys drown out the noise and find what's available, right? And I think those are things that you need to take into the off season and really be introspective about. Like watch your film, see what you were good at, see what you were bad at. Let us know when you come in things you need to work on, because we're not going to be able to watch all your film, right? What did your coaches tell you? I can tell you, Brady Cook walked to my office. We start talking. I made a comment about something that happened during a game, in particular to like a scramble rule, right? Like when he's scrambling, he stops the conversation. He puts it in his notes. Why? Because he wants to work on it this offseason. And it was nothing he did. It was more spatially how it worked, how the play worked out.
Right.
And That's the art of being a leader. That's the art of being in a situation where you want to win so badly that every little piece of information you hear is going to be digested and something's going to be done about it.
Yep. He's that guy. He's always been that guy, and that's why he's come off an 11-win season and a Cotton Bowl win.
Pretty
and
darn
MVP.
fun. Yeah.
Very much fun. A few things we didn't get a chance to talk about. We can save it till next time. Besides Blake Baker, pretty much most of Mizzou's defense is
what do you think staff-wise? Do you think they're going to lose a lot of staff with him?
We'll see. I'm not so sure about that. They're losing a bunch of guys into the portal, mostly defensive guys. Their schedule is going to be more difficult. They did pick up Sterling Webb, really good player. We didn't get a chance to really talk about him too much. A lot of portal guys, a lot of local guys who have gone off to other schools who are now like Cassius Howell from Rockhurst went to Bowling Green. Just going to go to Texas A&M now.
Mm-hmm.
Was looked at by Florida. Interestingly enough, he was a sack leader, I do believe, in the MAC. Mizzou told me he had no interest. They had no interest in him.
None.
They didn't reach out to him at all.
So,
but we got to wrap things up.
We'll talk about that next week because I think that strategy of re-recruiting guys is something we want to get into.
It is. We were going to get into it now, but we like to talk.
We got a lot of stuff to talk about.
Got a lot of stuff to talk about. It never ends. So anyway, everybody stay safe out there. The roads look pretty good when I was coming in, but we're supposed to have some more stuff. We are tough. We're tough. But it's been fun as always. Fastest hour football talk on the planet. And we will talk to you next time. Everybody stay safe. We'll see you then.